Okay, we're back again, and this is Mr. Shawn Browning, and a lot of you know him. Usually, when you see him live, he looks a little different than this. I mean, this is Shawn under the, lifting the mask.
It's like a Clark Kent Superman
thing. Yes,
so I can operate in the real world.
Yes, well, you never see Shawn Browning and his, what's the grave robber name?
My character? My character is Wretched.
Well, you never see them together.
No.
So there's, we don't know. We just don't know. You never see them in the same room at the same time. So, just like Superman.
The secret's starting to get out.
Yes, well.
Yeah.
Anyhow, listen, I mean, you've been in music for a real long time. I mean, kind of give me a rundown. I mean, how old were you when you started? How many bands have you been in? I remember the Misfits.
Too many. Well, I was never in the Misfits.
Or not the Misfits.
The Migraines.
I
was in the Migraines. That was the first original project of any notability that I did. But I was in, bar bands and all that kind of stuff, high school bands and garage bands or whatever, starting at about, tried to be in a band when I was about 14 or 15, and we were absolutely terrible. We were called Phantasm. And what was really funny about that band, side note, that years later, that same group of guys got back together and just recorded some stuff on a 4-track, and we were really good because we kind of went out there and figured it out. But it wasn't a band that we were going to put back together. We just did it for fun, just for ourselves. But that was the earliest band that I was in, and then I just from there progressed, into Fort Wayne at that time. We're talking early to mid '80s. There wasn't really an original music scene per se. There's always been people who've done original music, but at that time, it was all bar bands. You'd go down to Fryman Square and, there'd be 2 or 3 bands that would play in the park every Sunday night. They're always cover bands. Like, hardly ever. I mean, once in a blue moon, there'd be a band that did maybe a handful of originals or an original or whatever. But really, if you remember the Red Belly Boys or the Feel. I mean, they were, doing the bar band thing, but they were also doing some originals. And so you had bands like that had a few, but there really wasn't an original music scene to where bands were putting their foot down and saying, that's it, I'm going to play originals. I'm not going to play covers. We're done. You didn't really have a strong original music scene until the early 90s. And I know somebody's going to watch this and have like a laundry list of bands that did it before the early 90s. But
I can think of a couple, right?
Yeah, there were, but there wasn't a scene. Yeah. So the scene didn't really happen until the early 90s. So at that point, that's when the Migraines started. I was tired of playing in bars, and I added up all the money that I made, from a nightly gig. I'm like, okay, let's see, how many hours in rehearsal, how much were guitar strings, and that's not even a drummer. I mean, a drummer spend, so how much are the guitar strings? How much gas did I spend getting to the gig? How many hours did I spend setting up and tearing down? How many hours at the gig and playing the gig? And then, if you were lucky, it was like a $500 gig, which that's a great gig back then. $500 gig, 5 guys in the band, each guy gets $100, and you break it down, and you're making so far below minimum wage by that point.
It comes out to about 49 cents an hour.
Right.
By the time you put in driving and gas,
I'm I might as well write songs and play what I want to play. And so that's what I did at the time. And then I found there were a bunch of other bands that were doing the same thing. So we kind of got together and started playing shows and convincing the bars around Fort Wayne to, hey, give us a night. Let's have a Thursday. Let's have a Wednesday. Then it became, let's have a Friday. Let's have a Saturday. And 4 or 5 bands on the bill. And we promote really hard because we thought, we better pack this place, because if they, they're used to the cover bands packing the place, we better pack the place. So we did that. And then from there, I played the Migraines for 15 years. I started Grave Robber about 3 or 4 years before the end of the Migraines. I can't talk today. Before the end of the Migraines, just a little bit before that. And so there was an overlap of the two, and then it went on from there. But then once Grave Robber was kind of up and running and, kind of snowballing on its own, I started doing some other things and playing in the Mighty McGuigan's, Irish band with you as our new bass player.
One gig.
Yeah, one gig so far, yeah. So I did that, and I've done all kinds of other, one-off things here and there. And so, I'm always keeping busy with something musical. or just something that artistic.
When did you start Rottweiler?
Rottweiler started in 2010.
Okay.
So this is the 11th year.
Now, did that start originally just to get Grave Robber out? Did you do it just to put your own band out, or did you have the idea of let's have a label?
That was part of it. See, Grave Robber was signed to a different label, and right before we went on tour, things were building up to the tour, and we were supposed to go on the tour to promote the album. Well, some things happened with the label. It's the old boring rock and roll story. I'm not going to even go down with that, and I'm not angry about it or bitter about it. It's just what happens. And so we, leading up to the tour, basically we had a parting of the ways with the label. No album, no label support, no nothing. Listen to my English. Nothing going on. And I remember riding in the van. We're going from town to town, playing shows, and leaning my head against the window, just watching cornfields roll by. and all of a sudden it was like God spoke to me and said, why do you need a record label? I put everything around you. You've got a great recording studio, access to a great studio, Tim Bushong's studio, which is where you recorded your album, and I've recorded all the Grave Robber records with Tim Bushong. So you got a great studio. There are radio people all around me, artists, I mean visual artists that were there. Somebody who could do mastering, radio people that I had met. Gosh, I'm sure I'm forgetting something, but everything to do it was just right there. Now, the one thing that wasn't there was money, because usually what a record label is, and I'm gonna let the secret out of the bag right now. Usually, what a record label is a bank. The record label says, here's $10,000, $20,000, $50,000, $100,000. Make this record, and now I own you. You are indebted to me. I hate that. I hate that paradigm.
And they want to own your publishing. They want to own you.
Everything. They want to own you. As an artist, I don't want to own anybody. In fact, my goal was to protect artists. To say, how can I help somebody get their material out, get it as far as I can get it? And I will admit, I'm small potatoes next to, a major label. I can't do what a major label does. I can't even do what most powerful indie labels can do. But what I can do is give advice and keep young artists, maybe not so young artists,
thank you.
away from those kind of pitfalls where they're in debt, where they're never going to pay it back. It's never going to happen. So I can do all those kind of things because I'm really good at negotiating between, like, well, hey, this art over here. Well, hey, if I get you this deal with this guy, would you do my art for free, or would you trade it off, or would you, so I work those kind of deals as much as I can to try to, make it a win-win situation for everybody involved, but also keep the artist out of debt and protect them from the things that I went through, the things where you're leading up to a tour and you don't have your product, or there's something coming down the pike, and it just becomes a massive disappointment because the label didn't do what they promised. Now, there's been times where I haven't done what I promised. There are circumstances arise, and you just can't always.
We just went through one.
We just went through one, right?
Yeah,
right. And so you can't always bat 1,000, but you do your best to do bat 1,000. So, thinking I want to protect artists from the bad stuff that's in the quote unquote industry. I want to protect them. So we had just gotten this Rottweiler puppy, and his name was Vader, and because we're Star Wars nerds. And so we got Vader, and that dog, from the time he kind of figured out his place in the family, he also figured out that he was not at the top of the totem pole, he was at the bottom of the totem pole. However, because he was at the bottom of the totem pole, he also realized that it was his job to be a protector. I thought, wow, Rottweiler Records. That's hard to say, but I like the concept of it. I'm not at the top of the totem pole. I'm not the boss. I jokingly on my emails have alpha dog or whatever on my emails. It's a joke. I mean, I'm kidding, because I
call you owner operator alpha dog.
Yeah. But I don't consider myself to be, I'm the boss and you do what I say. I don't look at it that way. What I look at is okay, you sit down with an artist and say, what's your vision? What do you want to do? What do you want to accomplish? And I'm like, okay, how can I facilitate that? How can I be a part of that? How can I be a link in the chain to make that vision happen? Or, sometimes artists say, I'm thinking I want to do X, Y, Z, and I'll go, ooh, done that before with several artists. Never works out. It's a terrible idea. That's part of the protection, keeping somebody away from things that could be damaging, time consuming, or even something that would suck the life out of them, to make them feel like, wow, what a humongous waste of time that was. I don't want an artist to go down that path either. So it's all about protecting the artist. It's about just looking out for them and considering them just as important. So yes, it was partly about a vehicle for Grave Robber to have a record label, but it was also about looking at how all these other bands were getting screwed over. And I'm like, yeah, that's got to stop. So,
but did you ever, you've got quite a roster now, and did you ever think it would go to where it is now? I mean, and I've seen Rottweiler on these indie lists of, the really heavy. I don't know what I'm the word I'm looking for, but the really in-your-face music charts.
Yeah.
And I see Rottweiler all the time.
When I started seeing Rottweiler's name next to Solid State and Face Down and Tooth and Nail and labels like that, like, wow. And so, the truth is we're not. But the perspective from some people is they'll look at a Solid State roster of bands and go, okay, I like these bands, but you know what? I also like these bands on Rottweiler. And so from a fan perspective, they don't care about the business end of it. They just care about the music and the art.
I know
so,
that, yeah.
So our goal has always been to present it in a way where the art, the visual side of it, looks as close to the major labels as we can get it, to where the sound is as close to the major labels as we can get it, with the tools we have available. I mean, we don't have the same studio that Solid State has access to. We don't have the same artist that Solid State has access to. But I think we do pretty good. And I think the fans look at it and they believe it's comparable. And so that's the goal, to make it comparable.
What are the major changes that you've seen in the music industry?
Nobody's buying music.
Yeah. Well,
they're all streaming
really, there's no money involved pretty much anymore. I think the days of people becoming mega wealthy like Paul McCartney or the Stones is over with.
Yeah.
That's not going to happen anymore.
And I don't know how some of the big artists, like somebody like Billie Eilish or whatever her name is. I said it as a joke.
Yeah.
Billie Eilish.
Yeah.
What's her name?
I don't know.
Billie, that Billie kid. Like, I mean,
baggy clothes and funky hair.
Yeah, that one.
Don't look at me. I don't know her.
Anyway.
Come on, Curtis. You know who we're talking about.
Yeah.
No, she seems like she's making a bunch of money, like hand over fist. Maybe she's not. Maybe that's just the perception. And maybe we're looking at artists like that are quote unquote big and think, oh, they got to be making money hand over fist. The same way fans would look at Grave Robber, look at John DeGroff, look at, whoever, taking the head of Goliath. Oh, the band's so big and so huge. So it's all about the perception. And sometimes the perception is not the reality. The perception is that, but personally, I don't, it's going to sound like a weird thing to say. I care less about the money aspect than I do the artistic aspect of it. And of course, as a Christian label, the number one thing is I care about the ministry aspect of it first, then the artistry, and then, the money thing. I guess I would care about it if there was, if there was money there to actually be concerned with, then I would. So that's not to say that there's no money, but it's not, nobody's adding on to their house by being on Rottweiler Records. Nobody's buying a sports car, I mean, we can't even.
You just crushed my dreams, man.
I can't even fuel up the Rottweiler copter anymore.
Oh, jeez.
I know.
Okay, wow. I had to let the beach house go.
Yeah, I know.
Well,
the Rottweiler Island is no longer. You can't do it. I know.
Sad.
It is sad. Sad state of affairs in the music business now.
Well, I'm going to kind of skip this one question, but what I did with trophy hunting for unicorns, we have two albums on your label. The
Mm-hmm.
first one's Salt, and I explained why it's called Salt versus John DeGroff and Friends. That's on the introductory video to this whole YouTube experience, so you can check it out. I won't waste your time here, but we are kind of the anomaly.
Yeah,
we're the odd man out on your label. I mean, what kind of reaction have you gotten about that?
Okay, so the biggest reaction that I get, it's probably not what you're thinking. It's not that fans of Rottweiler go, "Why did you sign John DeGroff? This doesn't fit with taking the head of Goliath. This doesn't fit with." You know, that's not the reaction. The reaction I get is that when people hear your stuff, they assume that Rottweiler Records is just kind of a hodgepodge label, rather than you being the anomaly. They assume, well, okay, so we have all these heavy bands, of death metal bands, and then you got John DeGroff. So you're probably gonna like my avant-garde jazz. Blah, 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 blah. And so I get, so because of you, I have started getting these demos in that just don't really fit the label. With you being on the label, yes, it's an anomaly. And I explained that when I first signed you and announced you. I'm like, sometimes I just do what I want. That sounds really cocky.
That's your punk rock
ethos. That's right. That's right.
You know.
And that sounds cocky because it is. And sometimes I just want to do something.
You got John Schlitt on your label, if you want
well,
to.
That's pretty cool.
Great
yeah.
I mean,
yeah.
Look at what's happening here.
I mean, it pretty much is a Petra reunion album.
Oh, don't say that.
In a weird kind of way.
Let's not talk Petra reunion. I mean, 2022 is coming up. That'll be 50 years.
Oh my gosh.
Yes.
But so sometimes I just want to do something, and partly because we were already friends, partly because I thought, man, that would be just fun to throw that in the mix. You know, I've also got Lust Control, an old school punk rock band from way back in the late 80s, you know, and that was a weird one. That one kind of threw people. So
what's the scripture of fly in the ointment makes dead flies make the ointment of the apothecary stinketh. That's an actual scripture. I think it's in Ecclesiastes.
Yeah.
You know what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do. Yeah.
But
sometimes it's just fun to do something that steps outside of the norm. But the problem is now they've got bands that think that I do that all the time, and I don't do that all the time.
Well, you're getting all kinds of interesting stuff in the mail because of me. You know, if you don't like any of it, send it my way. I'll listen to it.
Yeah. Well, a lot of it's digital files. Nobody sends CDs anymore. Yeah.
I know. I'm
but
unashamedly old school.
I am too. I am too. Like I keep looking at my CD collection and thinking I should rip it into a hard drive or something, but I'll never get to it. It'll never happen. Yeah. But so I mean, truthfully, both of your albums are kind of the odd man out records on the label. But at this point, I would say my own band is an odd man out because of the direction that the label went. It was intended to be. I wanted to do like a punk rock label. Well, there's like 5 Christian punk rock bands in the country, it seems like, and most of them were in California, and most of them were signed to my buddy Dave's label, Thumper Punk. So that's where you find most of the punk rock bands are on this punk rock label, and they're all out in California, and they all live within like 2 or 3 blocks of each other, it seems like. And so there's all these punk bands in California that kind of got together. But I'm not opposed to signing some more punk rock bands or even a goth type thing or whatever. I'm not opposed to it. My thing is intensity and integrity. Has to have both. And somebody might say, okay, they might listen to, they might listen to Taking the Head of Goliath. Okay, they might listen to that. And then they might listen to John DeGroff and go, well, that's not heavy. Yes, it is. It's a different kind of heavy. I mean, heavy's a hard thing to define. Does heavy mean loud? Well, I can make your album just as loud as anybody else's record. So does heavy mean thick guitars? Well, yeah, there's some really thick guitars on your record. Does heavy mean the vocal style? Well, what does it mean? Does it mean, crazy drumming? Well, come on, Curtis has a bunch of crazy drumming on that record. There's crazy drumming on it. There's thick guitars on it. There's, there is an intensity. Some of those, the first time I heard 3 Nails, I was like, whoa. The closing song on your new record, I was like, wow. I mean, but it's a different kind of heavy. It's like, I had this conversation with somebody earlier. They're like, man, Kiss looks like they're heavy, but they're not heavy at all. I'm like, Detroit Rock City in 1976 was a really freaking heavy song. You know, you can't tell me that's like, you know, so it's all in context, you know, but I understand what people mean when they say, well, DeGroff stuff isn't heavy, but I disagree. I think it's heavy in a different kind of way.
Yeah, I kind of tend to agree with you on that one. I mean, you know, talk about different songs. There's right in the smack dab middle of the album, there is a rockabilly song.
Yeah.
That is called Anachronistic Anachron. I can never pronounce it.
How do you think I felt?
Anyway, Dan Liu wrote the music for it, and I played a acoustic bass on it, and it sounds like an upright. And Dan is a very, very clean player.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
He's pretty much made a lifetime study of guys like Phil Keaggy and Tommy Emmanuel.
Mm-hmm.
He's not a, you know, distorted, you know, big heavy guitar type of guy, but he's got chops.
Oh yeah.
And I had played some rough cuts for you, and you heard that and said, I really like it, but it needs lyrics. And so the idea was, well, I didn't write the song, Dan wrote it, so put you two guys together.
Mm-hmm.
And you came up with the lyrics.
Yeah. Except for the last verse, which was you.
Was that, did we throw you a curve on that one? Was it fun to come up with those lyrics?
Yeah, no, it was. And so the thing that I loved about being a part of that song, a couple things. One, my old guitar player, Mike Walter, taught me that he was a musicologist, and he taught me that you call things songs. We all call, you know, if it has a beginning, a middle, and ending, it's called a song. He goes, nope, it's only a song if it has words. Other than that, it's an instrumental. He was at college, and that's what they were telling him. Okay, whatever. So I heard it, and I go, okay, that's an instrumental. That needs to be a song. That needs to have some lyrics. And I said, what's it called? He said, Anachronistic Anachronism, which I can say now because I had to sing it. But before I could barely even say the title.
I can spell it. I can't pronounce it.
I can barely spell it. But so Anachronistic Anachronism, and I didn't even know what that meant, you know. But, you know, the simplest, I guess, definition would be something that is out of place and yet a contradiction, and or whatever. I can't even really define it, but the contradiction part. So I thought, well, that'd be fun to write lyrics where it just talks about these contradictions in the form of this character talking about himself being so out of place in this world. Like, just like, I don't fit here. I don't belong here. I'm not a part of what this world is. And I thought, well, it's the song itself sounds like it has a lot of levity. And it's fun. It's, you know, all rockabilly sounds like that. Inherently, it just sounds like fun, you know. And to me, and probably because I grew up watching Happy Days in the 70s as a little kid, and they're all, you know, they're down at Al's and eating cheeseburgers and drinking milkshakes and dancing to the jukebox. And so you have this whole kind of thing going on in your mind of like, this just sounds like a fun time, but yet the main character is like all this fun's going on around him. But yet he's completely out of place, and he's just finally admitting, okay, I'm the odd man out. I'm the square you're trying to push into a circle. I'm the 8 ball. I am the odd man out. And so, honestly, there is a little bit of that song that to me is autobiographical, because that's kind of my whole life has been odd man out and feeling a little bit weird. I was adopted as an infant, and, you know, a lot of times if you talk to people who were adopted, like yourself,
yes,
and people who are adopted kind of have that we start out our life going, okay, here I am, you know, and I may not fit in to the norm, or fit into the program, or fit into this thing, and you kind of live your life that way. Yeah. And there's a point.
It never leaves you.
No, it doesn't.
It never leaves you.
No, it doesn't. It doesn't. And I don't want to make this sound like I'm whining about it. The good thing is there's a part in your life where it flips over and you go, I kind of like it. It's comfortable to be
you
that. You
reach a certain age where you just you completely 100% accept yourself.
Yeah.
All the good, the bad, the weirdness, the wrinkles, you know, and just say, okay, Lord, this is, thank you. Help me with the rough stuff.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah, exactly. And so for me, it was like, it was a song to me. And I think I wrote it so that if somebody else listened to the lyrics, they wouldn't necessarily get that. That's for me. That's my thinking about what the lyrics mean. Hopefully somebody else listens to it and kind of gets their take on what the lyrics mean, because I didn't want it to be just so blatantly obvious what it was. So for me, it's about me saying, you know, like, my favorite line in the whole thing is, well, my favorite line is the one that I didn't even write. It's yours at the end, where it flips over, and it's just a moment of, like, you know, accepting that this is this way because God ordained it.
But that was Dan's idea. Dan had emailed me and said, is there some way we could incorporate that scripture from Hebrews, Christ is the same yesterday, today, and today, into this? And
which was really hard to fit in musically.
But we did.
It took me a while to get that line.
We did it.
Yeah. But my favorite line in the song, though, just because I think it's so funny, is like, the world changes its mind like I changed my socks, redefining terms, altering words. What's next? 13-hour clocks? You know, and because there's, I think, and I don't think that I'm alone because, like, oh, I was adopted, so I'm the only one who can understand this. I think everybody can understand this, with the world changing and things are different, and what was once profane is now accepted, and vice versa. And all these different things are getting, you know, it's just a crazy world that we live in. Everybody's offended about this or offended about that, and people not getting along who got along at one, just all this craziness that's going on. I just thought it was just funny to say, what's next? 13-hour clocks? You know, like, you know, what's, you know, it seemed like I would wake up every day and find out, oh, you can't say that anymore. Oh, well, that's wrong.
Yeah.
You know, every day I'm learning something new that you can't do, and, you know, out in society anymore. And so maybe some of those things are good, but it just seemed like the ball was rolling really, really fast, especially right around the time that song was written. You know, things were just really, really going nuts. And so to me, I thought that line was both funny and poignant at the same time.
Well, it was Curtis's idea to put it in the exact geographic middle of the album. And then you hear this prog rock and jazz, and then this thing, it fades in, the song fades in and it fades out. And we started regarding it, it's like the Project's Cousin Eddie. It just kind of, it shows up unexpectedly, does its thing, and then leaves. You know.
I've described that song as literally doing this. Here's the song. Ready? The song goes. That's literally what that song does on the album in context.
And it's followed by a smooth jazz thing. I mean, you want to talk about a weird segue. It goes out of this rockabilly thing with Dan doing some incredible licks at the tail end of it. Yeah. And then it comes in with Greg and I doing this smooth jazz thing that is just so totally different.
Well, it's gonna, because to those of you who have not heard the song, it comes in. That's how it comes in. Then the song exits. Just the same way it comes in, the same way it leaves. So it, like, sneaks in, looks around, waves at you, then sneaks back out, and so and yeah, put it in the middle of the song was the best idea ever. I mean, or the middle of the album is best. But
he came up with some big band drum chops.
I was just gonna mention that. That was just yeah. You guys don't see Curtis. He's standing behind the camera, but he's the drummer, John's drummer, and my favorite moment on the entire album. No offense to John, who's a phenomenal bass player, but my favorite moment of the entire album is when Curtis hits the floor tom and sticks his elbow on it and makes the drum go. It's like the best when that comes on, especially if you're in your car stereo and you got enough low end. It just goes in your car. It's awesome. It's just such a cool moment, you know. And that's the thing about your album, I think, that is awesome. Just all the you created moments on that album. It's not just, okay, you know, Grave Robber, it just has one speed, and it's just full, it's everything's cranked up to 11, and dynamics just really aren't a thing. Although we have a new song coming out that starts with a lot more dynamic than we normally do. But this album, just even the volume levels, and I thought that Tim's master on it was so good because you can tell he didn't feel like the big rock numbers, like he had to take those smoother jazzy sections and make those as loud as the rock songs. So the whole album has this kind of ebb and flow volume wise and dynamic wise, and you're creating these moments within the album to where you like every time I listen to it, I pick up on something else. I go, oh, that's my favorite part. No, that's my favorite. No, the drum things, but no, that's my favorite. You know, and so every time I listen to it, there's something else that you go, yeah, you know. And the other thing is, you have to be a music fan to appreciate your album. If you're just a metalhead, you might not like it. Yeah. You have to like music. You have to understand music. You have to understand. What I mean by that is to have a wide palette, to listen to the album and get it, to understand it, to enjoy it. You know, I think if you don't, you can probably listen to the album and pick out some things you do like, but to enjoy the album as a whole, you have to have a pretty wide palette.
Well, John Schlick paid me one of the better compliments I've ever gotten, and it was during the sessions for the first album. Mm-hmm. We weren't with Tim's studio, we were with another studio down in Indy. Just really can't kind of comprehend prog rock. He said, this is musicians' music.
Yeah.
And I thought, coming from John Schlitt, I'm going to regard that as a compliment.
Yeah, which is funny because to me, Head East, I mean, I guess Head East was kind of just straight ahead rock and roll, but they kind of had a touch of proggy something going on, you know, a little. And it was that era.
When we were working on the new one, there's a song called When the Grid Goes Down. Mm-hmm. And when it came time to do it, when we had him in the studio to do the vocals, he couldn't do it. Wow. He couldn't do it the first time. And there's one line in each verse that you have to get the timings precise to get the lyrics right with it. And he just could not get the timing the first time. So we kind of passed over that and did it the next day.
Yeah.
But, I mean, I told my wife, John Schlitt had problems with one of my songs. And she's a huge John Schlitt fan. In fact, it was John's testimony that got her life back on track for the Lord at a Petra concert. But she said, you know, that you have managed to confuse one of the best one of the best singers on the planet. That says something for prog rock.
Well,
I guess that's a compliment.
I shared John's pain. I was doing a rockabilly song, of all things. That should be the easiest thing in the world. It's 1-4-5 blues progression, really, if you think about it.
Yeah.
And that's what rockabilly is. But that last verse, just the way that the lyrics were set up for that last verse was tricky.
Well, it made sense to me, and I'm not a singer, but you know, I guess. Well,
it took a minute.
Kind of move here in a different direction. Sure. You are also a pastor of a small gathering.
Mm-hmm. Called The Gathering.
Called The Gathering. Okay.
That kind of came out of a couple things. Ooh, you asked me to say dangerous things. No, you're not asking me to do it. I'm going to do it anyway.
Do it.
Because I do what I want. We already established that. I'm kidding.
Punk rock ethos, buddy. Come on.
So, well, the fact is I've known that I had a calling my entire life, and I ran from it for a long time. And there's a point, remember that if you've ever seen Forrest Gump and he's running and he just stops and everybody stops and looks at him like, what are you doing? And he just turns around and goes home. Well, at one point in my life, I just turned around and went home. I just turned around and went, I give up. I can't run away any longer. What was interesting about that, when I finally submitted and said, okay, Lord, I'll do what you want me to do. When I finally did that, what was really interesting about that is I had gone through a series of less than stellar church experiences, okay? And I didn't understand why, but now I know. It was the Lord showing me all the things not to do and how not to treat people and how not to, add things to Scripture that aren't there and things like that. So, I'm on my best day, I would give myself maybe a C or a C minus. I'm not a great pastor, not by a long shot. But what I do know is that I stick to the Scriptures. I stick to what's there, and we just pull apart the verses. We go chapter by chapter, verse by verse, pull the verses apart, talk about it in context, and go with that. But one of the big things that I noticed was like being the fictitious character in Anachronistic Anachronism, being a square peg. I realize there's a lot of people that want to connect with Jesus, but they're square pegs and they don't fit in. They don't fit in with the church. So I thought, what if you on purpose, created a place like that? So it was interesting. I was at Pierre's one night, a big rock club in Fort Wayne, and I went to every single crew member. And these are not Christian guys. They're just dudes, you know, they're humping gear and setting up mics and, you know, and all that kind of stuff. And so I went to them, I go, hey, do you go to church? No, not a single one of them. Okay. Why? It's too early. It's boring. And I hate the music. Fair enough. Agreed. You know, and so we put ours at 2 in the afternoon. So you sleep in till the crack of noon, get up and go. Tried to make the music at least a little energetic, a little more so than your average. And I tried to, dangerous word to say, I tried to be entertaining with the presentation of the lesson. In other words, use humor, and not just enteraining for entertainment's sake, but to make it interesting. You know, you take the person who may not be quite as churched as someone else, or the person who has been clobbered over the head their whole life, and present it to them and put some context that they can use in real life. Everything that I've ever read in the Bible still applies right here, right now. There's still some application. So a lot of times you go and you get this head knowledge type lesson from someone, and you go, well, great. What does that mean to me right now? What is that going to mean to me when I go down to Walmart? What's that going to mean to me when I'm pumping gas? What's that going to mean to me when I'm pulling through, you know, Arby's? I mean, what is this? How does this apply to my life? I mean, that's 2,000 some years ago. Well, it does apply, but I think we need to talk about how does it apply. You know, put it into an application that people can grab a hold of. The word entertaining, when I said that, I didn't mean like we're putting on a show. What I mean is to keep people engaged in what you're saying. So I'm purposeful about that, you know, and purposeful about saying, this is what this means to us right here, right now. So that's the gathering. And, you know, it's a place for, you know, miscreants and, you know, misfits and miscreants. And you know, we got a whole list of people that we, you know, made. It was just kind of comical, you know, people that have been ostracized by the church, you know, beekeepers, whatever, you know, like this list of people that were kind of outside, you know, fringe type people. And then we also said, and we'll even let religious people in because we think they can be saved. Yeah, yes, occasionally that happens.
Well, you're going to kind of wind up here in a little bit, but if you had any advice to give to new musicians, what would it be? In general. Go
to college and just give up your dreams. No, I'm kidding. Yeah. No, I'm kidding. Don't do that.
Try cook.
Do something constructive with your life. No. The biggest thing is, as an artist, do art. You know, do art. There are people that probably look at Grave Robber and say, that's not art. And like, well, that's not your art. That's my art. Mm-hmm. So there might be people that might even say that about your stuff. I think they're stupid if they would say that. But art is really subjective. And if you've got...
I use the phrase acquired taste. That's basically what Curtis and I come up with. Yeah. It's an acquired taste.
Yeah. Well, art is really subjective. And art is something that I believe it's God-breathed. I really do. I think it's one of the gifts that God gave us was to be, as He is a creator, as His image bearers. We are given the ability to be creative. You know, we can't speak things into existence, but we can sure use our hands and our mouths and our brains and our hearts to do something that beautifies and colors the world. So that's the primary thing. I would also say, if you're getting into music to make money, you are barking up the wrong tree. If that's your goal, don't do it unless you want to join a country cover band and become really famous and popular in your area to where you might make a good living doing that. But if you're going to play metal, or you're going to play punk, or you're going to, even the stuff you do, that's the pursuit of coin for earthly.
Oh, you'll spend more money being a musician than you make back. I mean, I tried to figure out one year how much money have I made as a musician, and it was pathetic.
Yeah.
You know, even with Petra, I didn't make any money in Petra. And right now, it's like, I've just bought another bass, which my wife allows me to do this stuff. Guys, if you're going to get married, make sure she's a musician. because she'll understand.
Yes,
so,
yes.
you know.
So, yeah, that's good. That's better advice than I gave. That's really good advice.
She'll understand.
Yeah. No, so I just do music for the right reasons now, because there isn't any money in it. It might be some pocket change, but it's not. The pocket change isn't worth the headache if that's your goal, and so that's the main thing. And the other thing is to find people that are good people to play with. Don't waste your time playing with people that cause you strife and pain and suffering. Don't play with those kind of people. Do not sign to a record label unless you just really have to. That sounds counterproductive for me saying that. But in this day and age, you don't really need a record label.
You don't.
But if you have somebody like myself that will do it for you, by all means do it.
If you go to the next level,
to
a major label, my advice would be make sure you have a good attorney.
Yes, I was going to say that.
Make sure you have an attorney.
Have a good lawyer.
And don't sign anything until you've read it and it's understood to you in English what's actually going on.
Yeah.
And,
I would also say that there's a lot of bands that go out. Sweetwater's close to us, one of the biggest music retailers in the world, and they go to Sweetwater, buy an amp, buy a guitar, buy a set of drums and some drumsticks, and they haul it home, and then they're making phone calls to the studio to get into the studio, like first day. Like, they bypass all the woodshedding, and I think the woodshedding is where we've lost the art.
Oh yeah,
it's too easy, because you can vomit something out on guitar and then tweak it on your computer, whereas there's no tweaking on your album, not really. You know what I mean? You can't make that style of music do something that you don't want it to do. You have to play it.
Yeah.
The stuff that Curtis played on drums on that album, you can just listen to the album and go, yeah, those are real drums. You can't program that. You can't program what he played. You can't program what you played on bass. You can't program what Dan Lou did. It can't be done. Now, there might be some minor tweaking, like, okay, there's a little flat note and we're going to just nudge that. That's fine, and that's fair, because you want it to sound good. What's not fair is where you're taking something organic and analog and then turning it into digital poop and trying to massage this digital poop. Because everybody knows it's digital poop. Right. And that's where you end up with, like, what pop music has become.
That'd be a great band name.
Digital poop.
But you pointed out something that I was really blessed with this project, not only getting to work with Mr. Browning here, that he puts up with my musical eccentricities, and you'll probably have to go through it again in another year.
Let's hope.
We're writing the next album now.
Oh, here we go.
But the really cool thing is that nobody connected with my projects has an ego. Nobody. And might sound like I'm picking on somebody like John McCorkle, but he is so humble, and I've never played with anybody, a keyboard player, that good. And John Schlitt does not have an ego. I don't care what anybody says.
Not at all.
He is the most humble guy that I have ever been around, and he's got gold records and Grammys at home. And Curtis and I were, after the one session, we're sitting at Wendy's drive-through window at midnight. John doesn't care. He's a regular guy.
Yeah.
And everybody involved in the project does not have an ego, and yet they are some of the best people I have ever worked with.
Yeah.
Just phenomenal people.
That's fantastic.
And Greg Hogue, a lot of people don't know his backstory, and I won't tell it, but Greg has been through hell and back in his private life at times, and the Lord has blessed him, and to have him on it was amazing. He's so fun to work with. And it was just a blessing. And Curtis, I couldn't find a drummer. I literally have a T-shirt older than Curtis. I have a son older than Curtis. And, and I've not worked with a drummer this good. Ever. And it's been a blessing. And that's one of the really find people you can work with that you can get along with. It's better to have somebody you can get along with. Maybe not the most talented guy in the room, but you can get along with him.
Oh, yeah.
And if you get the combination of talent and no ego, put a net over that person.
Yeah,
Don't let them go anywhere.
Right.
You know.
Well, and what happens is when you get, okay, so let's just, for sake of argument, I'm going to say this right in front of Curtis. Let's just say there's a better drummer than Curtis, but he's a complete jerk, and you don't get along with him, and he's an egomaniac. And you got Curtis, and you go, okay, Curtis may not be as good as this guy, but I don't like this guy. So who's going to make the music better? Curtis, right? Because you're going to vibe with them.
You're going to work together.
You're going to with that person. The music is going to be better. You know, I use Curtis as an example. That's a poor example because I don't know too many drummers that are better than Curtis. But Curtis might know some drummers that are better than him, but I don't. But and here's a confession too. Might as well put this on tape. Years ago, his uncle played drums for me.
Oh yeah, I forgot about that. I forgot.
And said, "Well, I need to leave the band, but I want you to take on my nephew." And I said, "No." What a stupid mistake that was. Well, you got him now, so it all worked out. Yeah, but you know what I'm saying? Like you get people like you said that you can work with that don't have egos. That will make the music better than if you had the absolute best who are just unpleasant people. And,
because you can work together. You can say, man, I really like what you did except for this one part here. Could we kind of work with that? Mm-hmm. You know, could you make that a little more...
Oh, and I know you guys did that just by listening to the music. I can hear it. I can hear the conversations because I'm like, there's something where you guys do this run where the fill is locked into the bass run, and I'm like, oh, they talked about that. That's not an accident.
Well, we have a tune called Please Don't Feed the Rhino.
That's the one.
Rhino is spelled R-I-N-O, and those of you with a political leaning might understand that. Anyway.
And don't feed them.
Don't feed them. But we spent a lot of time working on that. And when I practice by myself at home, I tend to play a little too fast, and Curtis had to slow me down, make me listen to what he was doing, make me listen to what I was doing, and try to sync stuff up. And it just with what we've been talking about, that's exactly what those things don't happen by accident. No,
you have to communicate, and you have to talk about it, and you have to check your ego at the door. Otherwise, if you say, well, you're playing too slow, or you're playing too fast, well, screw you, I'm out of here. You know, and that's somebody that has an attitude will do that. Somebody who is humble will say, okay, let's see let's figure out what the tempo is. You know, let's figure out the right tempo. Let's figure out where the notes are going to land. Is it going to push here? Is it going to pull here? Here's what I'm hearing. Play it. Well, here's what I'm hearing. Okay, let's see if we can put that together. Believe it or not, Curtis's uncle Dave, we had a ton of things in Grave Rubber songs at that time where it was pushing and pulling, and there was tons of conversations, and that was part of the joy of putting those songs together, was saying, well, right here I want to push into the chorus. Right here I want to, instead of pushing into the bridge, let's square it off and come like right where one is instead of, the E of 4, which won't make any sense if you don't. If you've been in a band, you know what that means. You're pushing into the section. Okay, let's not push it in. Let's land right on. And so you can't do that with guys that have egos. It just doesn't work.
If people don't realize, a 3-minute song, it might take you 2 weeks to put that together.
2 weeks is fast.
2 weeks would be fast. But you know my point.
Yeah.
You don't realize the amount of work it goes into that, and you've got to have the chemistry between you. And I have that, and I have it with technically, you're my boss. You're the label head. Alpha dog, owner, operator, head dude. So, anything else you want to say?
It's a complete honor to be on this album. I've said that to you privately. Now I'm saying it publicly. It's an honor to be on the album, and I really mean that.
I got something for you to do. I got something for you to do in the next one.
Fantastic! I'm in. I was saved at a Petra concert, so it's a big deal to me. My band is named after a Petra song, so to be on an album with 3 former members of Petra to me, that's a big deal. That was like a bucket list thing to be able to do that. So that really is a big deal, and more importantly, to be on an album with my friend. That means more than even that. So I appreciate you having me. Thank you, and we're going to be churning these little videos out, as many as we can get. I don't know if this one's a little video. Well, hey, thank you.